Hi there, everybody. I'm nervous. I'll start like that. My name is Juliana Fajardini, as you heard. I'm with the OISF team. And today the idea is to highlight a bit our Suricata stats logs to hopefully help you find ones that help you on your daily routine working with Suricata. So I'm, as I said, part of the OISF team. I've been with the team since 2021. Before, I was an outreach intern with these lovely folks. I work with development. I'm the outreach coordinator and also mentor when we take part of this initiative. I do also documentation efforts. I'm a tickets enthusiast, and outside of work, I love knitting, nitpicking, reading, running, cats, nature. To find me at Fajardini will get me in most places. Today, we'll talk about the motivation for this talk, types of stats counters that we have, the high-level modules, expand a bit on some of those, a demo, and maybe open for questions and answers. So, why speak about stats? I have this weird thing where instead of talking about something I know a lot, I think about bringing topics of which I know very little, but that I feel would be interesting for others to also know. So last year I spoke about the internal rule types. And after that, I was thinking what I could bring this year, because I always think about bringing new talks, even though I get so nervous about them. And I thought about how often it is that we will see questions in our support channels or the forum that could be answered or helped in the answer by our stats counters. And common ones are, why is Suricata not detecting anything? Or is it really not detecting anything? Suricata stopped working after I upgraded or changed certain settings. Suricata is dropping packets. What's going on? There are performance issues. Why some of my alerts are not showing? These two links here are connected to this sort of questions. And hopefully my talk will give some directions to this sort of stuff. So I want to say a few things to introduce our stats. So we have around 600 counters and counting. They are either observational or on performance. Sometimes they are a bit of both. And this means that the observational bring insights into the inspected network traffic. In the performance is about how the engine is faring, so Suricata state. There are a few options and details that can be useful for you. Global stats configuration that will affect both the stats.log that we have and evlog type stats that are only for the evlog. I will focus a bit more on the evlog in this presentation, although some things are useful for both. So these options and details are, we by default log the total stats, but you can also enable deltas and threaded output. This can be very useful. Certain counters are snapshots at the time of logging or close to that, and some are incremental, so you should have that in mind when plotting or doing correlations. This may be obvious, but as I don't know how many of you use the logs I will say, it is possible to save the event for stats for JSON in a separate file to make your life easier. And the evlogs will, by default, log all the zero values. If you want to have non-zero, you can disable that. And the stats.log will not have those by default. What else is important? Yeah. They should be enabled. The default interval is 8, and there are a few more things. It's also useful to know and check. In our docs, we have a bit about the stats if you go to the performance section, and Philippe has mentioned, and I'm not sure if Eric has or will, but we have a JSON schema that we use to validate our logs in our Suricata Verify suite, but it is also useful for grabbing descriptions. So many of our counters, and not just counters, but other log fields have descriptions now that you could use to get some grasp of what is it that you are seeing. We know it's not always so obvious. And hopefully soon we will have the descriptions for all the high-level modules for our stats, hopefully. And speaking of those modules, we currently have 18. The ones in orange-ish here are not always enabled. This will be either by run mode or configuration dependent. The blue ones will be there. The capture one depends on the capture method that you have. This column here is related to memory usage, memory capacity hits, and such. And then you have ones that might be more obvious and ones that are a bit less. Defrag is for IP defragmentation, TCP is for TCP stream engine, decoder is for packet decoding, and so on and so forth. And now I want to present some of those. I will not go into all of them, but just for you to get some idea of what you can find there. So for the decoder, you will have observational and performance stats on the packet decoding engine, and some examples you will have the decoder packets or decoder bytes, packets that were deemed invalid, packets that have unknown method types, and you have decoder events with a load of stuff there that you can investigate if you are trying to debug or just have some health check on your network, and also the engine. For the flow, you can have access to how the engine is handling the flows, but also some things that are observational. You can have mem-use data, the state of the flows when the engine ended them internally, memory capacity, if and how many times the engine has entered in flow emergency mode, which is when Suricata is having trouble handling all the flows due to usually memory issues. So it goes into a more aggressive mode. So this is one very important to know about. Then you have capture that will show what Suricata has received from the kernel or not received in case of drops. And you will have ones that are specific per capture. So for instance, you will have ones if you have AF packet or so on and so forth. One that I wanted to mention also because it's easier for me as I've worked in this are the exception policies. These connect a bit to the firewall mode in the sense that these allow you to tell Suricata to fail, open, or close in certain scenarios, and we have stats to help you see what's going on. And why is this useful? Because both it helps you see if Suricata is reaching memcaps, for instance, or if it's seeing too many midstream sessions, but also for you to know which policy is being applied, and maybe that's why you are not seeing the packets that you expected to. In our docs, you can see the counters that we have available and which setting is related to that. And you will not see those if you don't enable exception policies. Another one that is very useful are the stream events. Those also have to be enabled. And these give you insights into the stream engine, and what Suricata is seeing there. So for instance, packet retransmission that could be useful to debug packet loss or have an insight into that. So back to the motivation. Is Suricata not detecting anything? You go and you check packets from the decoder, from the capture, and the kernel. You can see if there are alerts. You can see if there are drops. You can see if Suricata is blocking. You can see what's the drop reason if that's happening. My alerts are not showing. Maybe you have too many alerts matching against the same packet, and Suricata has a configuration set that tells you, or for you to tell the engine how many alerts are possible to match against the same packet. If you reach that number because your rule is too generic, for instance, you will get an alert queue overflow, and then those alerts that are past that will not be seen. How do you see that? Detect alert queue overflow will give you that information. If you want to change this, we have a configuration setting which is packet alert max that you can change that too, but you should also maybe probably check your rules. So I've mentioned for packet logs, those things. You can also check TCP, then reassembly gap in case of gaps. So this is the idea of what I wanted to highlight. There's a lot more, but I just wanted to give some taste of what we have. And when I mentioned that I wanted to present about the stats, Victor told me, I hope there are some nice visualizations. And I was like, come back. Okay. I was like, I don't do visualizations. I don't work with stats. It's back. Okay, anyways. But I was inspired by a talk a few years ago by Markus Kundt. He shared a Jupyter notebook with lots of cool things Suricata, and I thought maybe I could just load our stats logs and generate some visualizations. I'm checking the time. And do it in such a way that it's easy to load our logs and then decide which counters you would like to see. Because, all right, this will not go to your dashboard, but this could give you some ideas on what you want to take more time and bring to your dashboard. You can play here or just have fun with the graphs that I have and decide what you would actually want to implement or not. So we can see what are the high-level modules that we have. In this case, I had capture, decoder, TCP, flow. I do not have exception policies, and I do not have IPS. And if you want to see what all of those have, you can expand this. Then just some processing. For this log, we have 588 counts. That's counters. That's a lot of things to explore. And in this case, we have to know the exact name of each column, so you can check that. It's important to have the time for certain things that you want to do, so let's ensure that we have the timestamp for each log. And then let's play. What do we see if we have packets from the decoder over time? So this is what it looks like in my case. This is over traffic in my local network. It's not interesting. I wasn't even doing much. What if we decide to increment that? Because we know that, or take the difference, because I told you that it's incremental. So let's see what's the difference over time instead of having just incrementing. So that's what it looked like for my case. How's the TCP memory usage going? That's what it looked like. This can be useful for you to know if you need to improve your box or whatever, or if Suricata is doing something funny with traffic. How are we on alerts in terms of the packets that we are seeing? What's the flow end state? And you compare to flow mem use. Maybe we have to adjust that so we can actually see the flows. And what if we want to compare two different counters over time to see cool things, like one thing that I think that Eric showed in the training, like compare drops and things like that. So I hope this gives you some inspiration on what you can do with the Suricata stats. Maybe you are already using them. There are lots of interesting and cool tools that use Suricata. Maybe you try to use it and you will learn that you do not have the visibility that you want because we don't have those counters. We have future work to distinguish between observational and performance counters because currently we do not do that. We also know that we have to add dedicated counters for the firewall mode. And Eric was telling me yesterday how useful it would be if we could, have in the stats or documented if a counter is good or bad. This value that I'm seeing, when it's 0, is that a good sign? Is that a bad sign? Should I go check what's going on? So have maybe something in the schema that we could correlate could be interesting. And I wanted to I've mentioned the docs. We have stuff about performance and statistics. Victor has a very old script where he used to check for some stats counters. I use that as inspiration. Evebox also have some stats visualizations, and I hear that there's inspiration to have more soon. Check the available stats for the exception policies if you use that. And when I mentioned this talk to Jeff, he also mentioned that they use at Corelight something called Suricata exported with Prometeu, or Prometheus, I don't know how to say it. That looks very cool and interesting. And that's it. Thanks a lot. And I'm open for questions now. Oh, no.
Hey, thanks for that, Juliana. It was really insightful. Quick question on the exception policy ones. So right now, all of these are baked in the detect module. Decode module, right?
We have for stream TCP, for stream sessions, for stream reassembly, for midstream, so defrag. So I think it varies a bit.
Okay. Is there some plans to add more around some of the limits that that we currently have, or is this all of that?
We do have plans on having have to investigate more for stream async, and okay. I think that's currently it, right? Yeah. So for now, that's what we have. But if you see that there could be others, we are open to suggestions. The roadmap discussion is soon.
No, so the reason I'm asking this is because you mentioned that there is some future work around performance metrics, right? Is the goal to use that to add it here in exceptions? Do you see that as a path?
We haven't really thought on how we would handle showing what is more about performance and what is more about observation. Also because some of them are both. Okay. So a lot of thought will have to be given around this. So if you have input, that would be good. Okay. We may start, maybe if it's easier, with something annotating the JSON schema, because then we don't have to change the implementation, and it might be the best solution. I don't know yet. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.